The porcelain bowl trembled in my hands as I stared down at the steaming liquid. My mother-in-law's eyes glistened with something too sharp to be kindness as she urged, "Drink this special broth, dear. It's good for you." Her voice was sugar, but her smile was a dagger. My husband stood nearby, oblivious, scrolling his phone. I lifted the spoon, brought it to my lips, and stopped just shy of sipping. My gut screamed danger. Instead, I pressed the spoon gently against my mouth, pretending to swallow, while my heart pounded with fear. I had a plan, one she'd never see coming. When I rewind the clock, the tension with my mother-in-law didn't appear overnight. From the moment I married Daniel, her only son, Eleanor, made it her mission to remind me I was an outsider. She critiqued my cooking, the way I folded laundry, even how I laughed. At first, I brushed it off. "She'll warm up to me eventually," I told myself. Daniel always insisted. "That's just how she is, babe. Don't take it personally." But things got worse when we moved into the family home temporarily while saving for our own place. Living under the same roof turned subtle disdain into open hostility. Eleanor would hover in the kitchen while I cooked, muttering under her breath. She accidentally spilled tea on my dress the night of Daniel's office party, and then she began offering me food, strange teas, herbal brews, tonics she insisted were good for fertility. I wanted to trust her. After all, she was Daniel's mother. But each time I drank what she gave me, I felt sick. Not just queasy, burning stomach, dizzy head weakness that kept me in bed for hours. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he dismissed it. "You're probably just stressed. Mom's been into natural remedies for years. She wouldn't hurt you." But my instinct screamed otherwise. There was something malicious in the way she watched me drink, as if waiting for a reaction. And the more suspicious I became, the more insistent she grew. The breaking point came one Sunday afternoon. Daniel had stepped out to take a work call, and Eleanor appeared at my door with that porcelain bowl. The broth was thick, darker than anything I'd seen her prepare before, and it smelled faintly metallic. She stood there, hovering, her hands clasped in anticipation. "Drink it while it's hot," she said softly. "It's a family recipe. Helps balance the body." My throat tightened. Balance the body, or unbalance it permanently. I knew I couldn't refuse. If I resisted, she'd run straight to Daniel and twist the story. So I raised the bowl, let the steam fog my glasses, and made the tiniest motion of sipping. Then I pressed the edge to my lips, tilted my head back, and made a swallowing sound. "Good girl," she whispered. But instead of letting the liquid touch my tongue, I'd cleverly pressed the spoon against my lips, allowing only a trace to smear. My heart hammered. When she finally left the room, satisfied, I rushed to the bathroom. With trembling hands, I poured some of the broth into a clean travel bottle I'd stashed in my drawer just in case. The rest I flushed. That night, while Daniel slept, I lay wide awake, clutching that bottle under the blanket. I'd decided tomorrow I was going to the doctor. Whatever game Eleanor was playing, I was done being her pawn. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, steam rolled up from that bowl and fogged my vision, and Eleanor's voice slithered through the cracks. "Drink it while it's hot. Good girl." By dawn, I surrendered to wakefulness and padded to the kitchen on numb feet. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cedar, the scent she favored. The polished counters reflected the morning, perfect and sterile, as if nothing ugly could ever happen here. I filled a mug with water just to hear something normal. The travel bottle lay hidden in the zippered pocket of my tote, wrapped in a clean dish towel. I kept touching the bag, reassuring myself it was still there, like a talisman. Proof. The word felt like a match in the dark. Daniel came down in gym shorts, rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair sticking up in boyish tufts that used to make me smile. "Morning?" He yawned, reaching for a banana. "You okay? You were tossing all night." I studied his face, searching for any fissure of doubt. "Your mom brought me broth," I said evenly. "I didn't feel great after." He shrugged like we were discussing the weather. "She's trying to help. You know how she is, old school. She believes in bone broth and herbs. It's her thing." It smelled strange, I said, choosing my words carefully. Metallic, like pennies and sage. Daniel chuckled a soft, tired sound. Babe, everything smells metallic to you when you're anxious. Look, Mom, and you butt heads, I get it. But she wouldn't hurt you. The sentence landed between us like a slammed door. She wouldn't hurt you. How many times had I accepted that line as an olive branch? How many times had I swallowed something both literal and metaphorical? To keep peace, I swallowed now, tasting the ghost of tin on my tongue. I'm going to stop by the clinic before work, I said, rinsing the cup, though it was already clean, just to be safe. He leaned against the island banana half raised. You don't need to do that. That's a lot of drama for soup. It's not drama, I said quietly. It's my body. A muscle ticked in his jaw. If you make this a thing, Mom will get hurt. You know how sensitive she is. She'll think you're accusing her of… I'm not accusing, I interrupted, forcing my voice to stay gentle. I'm checking. There's a difference. He exhaled long and frustrated, then pressed a kiss to my forehead like he was blessing a child. Okay, do what you need to do, but please, don't tell her. At least not until we know something. Don't tell her. The irony stung. Eleanor always knew everything: what time I woke up, what laundry cycle I used, what calls I took and from whom. The house was a microphone she held in one hand and a spotlight she wielded with the other. She swept into the kitchen a moment later in a silk robe the color of cream. Good morning, she sang, lips painted like a threat. Sleep well, dear. Like a rock, I lied. Her eyes flicked to the sink, to my empty hands, and back to my face. And the broth. It was good for you. Yes. It was strong, I said, placing the word down like a neutral stone. Her smile pinched. Good. Healing is sometimes intense. She turned to Daniel, ruffling his hair. You're working late again. I'll make dinner. I have a new recipe, very nourishing. She looked at me over his shoulder. You'll like it, dear. The way she said nourishing made my stomach clench. I pretended to check my phone. I'll be eating with a client. I wouldn't. But if I stayed, I knew I'd be served. The first time I got sick had been harmless enough: a weird tea at a holiday brunch, a friendly, you must try this blend I brought back from the market. Within an hour, my stomach twisted. My head swam. I spent the rest of the day in bed with Eleanor, clicking her tongue about modern constitutions. The doctor chalked it up to a virus. So did Daniel. I accepted that answer because accepting was easier than seeing the pattern. Then it came again in spring. I was prepping for a presentation, and Eleanor stopped by my office with a jar of homemade tonic. For your nerves, she cooed, setting it on my desk. The liquid looked harmless. Tinted amber flecked with green. I drank half a cup to be polite. 2 hours later, my hands shook so badly I couldn't control my stylus, and my boss sent me home. Daniel held my hair while I knelt on cold tile and told me I worked too hard. Eleanor left a note. Next time, be sure to finish it. It only works if you finish. Summer brought fertility soups and a barrage of soft threats disguised as concern. You're pale, she'd say. You run yourself ragged. No wonder the family hasn't grown. A spoon pushed across the table. This will help. When I mentioned to Daniel that maybe we could move sooner than planned, the mortgage math suddenly became complicated, the timing inconvenient, the market uncertain. Eleanor had a way of making our lives seem safest within the perimeter she controlled. I began jotting details in my phone: dates, times, flavors, symptoms, how long until the ache arrived. I recorded her little hums when I sipped the zook of her breath, when I hesitated. It felt paranoid until it felt necessary. What do you call careful when careful keeps you standing? At lunch, I met my friend Mina at a cafe with tables that gleamed like small suns. She leaned forward, hair in a messy knot, eyes lined with worry. You look like you haven't slept in a week. I told her everything: how Eleanor hovered, how Daniel authorized the hovering by calling it love, how my body had become the battleground for someone else's need to win. Mina didn't flinch. This is not normal, she said. I don't care what anyone calls it. If your gut is screaming, you listen. Do you still have the… I tapped my tote, wrapped like a newborn. Good. Take it to a lab that accepts patient-delivered samples, she said, sliding me a card with a name scribbled across it. Ask for Dr. Patel. She won't roll her eyes. And if it's nothing, we'll celebrate. If it's something, Mina swallowed. We'll deal with it. I wanted to cry from the kindness. Instead, I laughed weakly. You make it sound so easy. It's not, she said, but it's clear. I arrived at the clinic just after 2 heart beating like a fist. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes and freckles, took my name and offered water. We'll get you in with Dr. Patel, he said after a quick call. She can advise on toxicology panels. The word toxicology sent a chill down my spine. It made everything too real. In the exam room, the paper on the bed crackled under me like winter ice. I handed the travel bottle to the nurse, who labeled it with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen everything. Dr. Patel came in with the brisk grace of a woman accustomed to urgency. Tell me what happened, she said, sitting on the stool tablet ready. I told her the broth, the smell, the history of teas and tonics, the symptoms that arrived like clockwork and left like a thief. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. She listened without interruption. Eyes steady, mouth set. You did the right thing, she said when I finished. We'll run a broad panel, heavy metals, toxic alkaloids, a few pharmaceutical screens. Do you have any prior labs from your previous episodes? I nodded and passed her a thin folder I'd started keeping after the spring incident. She flipped through pages frowning. Non-specific, but there are patterns. Electrolyte imbalances, elevated liver enzymes, transient tachycardia. She looked up. I'll mark this urgent. Something loosened in my chest. To be believed is a kind of medicine. On my way out, my phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor, I'll leave supper on warm. Do come straight home, dear. You need rest. The message looked like a benediction and felt like a trap. I typed back, don't wait up. Then after a beat, thank you for the broth. I hit send and stared at the dots as she typed. A minute later, her reply, anything for family. Anything. I stepped into the furnace of the parking lot, sunshine, glaring asphalt shimmering. The clinic doors whooshed closed behind me like a vault. I pressed a hand over my tote, now empty of its secret weight, and breathed. If last night was a plan, today was an oath. No more pretending, no more apologizing for breathing. I drove home with the radio off, listening to the white noise of my own resolve. Somewhere between the clinic and the quiet streets of our neighborhood, the fear that had been gnawing at me sharpened into something cleaner, a line I would not let anyone cross again. Not Eleanor, not even Daniel. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sky had gone the color of cool metal. I sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel, watching the curtains twitch in the front window. She was waiting. She always was. I wasn't running anymore. The house felt too still when I stepped inside, like the air itself had been listening for the sound of my key in the lock. The moment the door closed, the silence shattered. From the kitchen, I heard her voice low, melodic, as if she were humming to a child. Welcome home, dear Eleanor, called her tone honey-sweet but threaded with steel. She emerged in a cardigan and pearls as though we lived inside a permanent dinner party. I kept supper warm, just like I said. You must be starving. I wasn't. The smell hit me instantly. Ginger garlic, something darker beneath, almost sweet, but rancid at the edges. My stomach lurched, and I fought to mask it with a smile. Thanks, I said, shrugging out of my jacket. Her eyes narrowed slightly, scanning me with the precision of someone searching for cracks. You look tired. Did you go straight to work after I left? The question was casual on its surface, but her gaze held me pinned. She wanted to know if I'd gone somewhere else, if I'd dared. Meetings all afternoon, I said, loosening my scarf. Barely had time to breathe. Her smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. Busy, busy. You should pace yourself. That's why I take care of you. The way she said it, I take care of you, sounded less like kindness and more like a verdict. Dinner was a small war disguised as routine. She served Daniel first, piling his plate high with roast chicken and potatoes glistening with butter. He smiled, grateful, oblivious. She turned to me next, ladling a generous bowl of her special stew into porcelain patterned with ivy. "Eat, dear," she urged. "It'll restore your strength." The liquid shimmered under the light, almost too glossy. I pretended to adjust my napkin, my mind rehearsing excuses. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted the spoon. Daniel reached across the table. "See, Mom's always looking out for us." I forced a sip, barely wetting my lips, then set the spoon down. "Delicious," I lied. My throat clenched. Eleanor's smile widened. "Good girl." Daniel didn't notice the way my knuckles whitened around the edge of my chair. Later, when Daniel showered, I crept into the guest bathroom with my phone shutting the door with a soft click. I texted Mina. Sample dropped. Results in a few days. But she's watching. Always. Almost immediately, Mina replied, "Stay calm. Act normal. You're not alone." I clutched the phone like a lifeline, yet the walls themselves seemed to lean closer, listening. I lowered my voice to a whisper, even though I was alone. "Not alone," I repeated to myself. "Not anymore." The following days were a blur of suspicion sharpened into ritual. Every gesture Eleanor made carried double meaning. She left herbal teas by my bedside. "For your dreams." She stirred soups with a slow, deliberate rhythm, glancing up to see if I was watching. She asked questions that sounded benign, but probed too deep. "What time will you be home tomorrow? Which clients will you see?" Daniel, meanwhile, moved between us like a referee who didn't believe a game was happening. "You're both so tense," he'd sigh, rubbing his temples. "Can't we just have peace?" But peace to him meant silence. To me, it meant survival. One evening, after Eleanor had retreated upstairs, Daniel turned to me on the couch. "Why are you making her the enemy?" he asked. I swallowed my frustration. "I'm not. But you don't see the way she monitors me. The way she pushes things I don't want." He rubbed his face, exasperated. "She's eccentric. That's not the same as malicious." "Is it eccentric?" I whispered, "if it makes me sick." His eyes flickered, uncertain for a moment before he looked away. That tiny hesitation told me what I feared he didn't want to know the answer. At night, I began to hear sounds in the house. A creak outside our door. A shadow under the gap of light. Once I woke to find the faintest scent of her perfume in our room, though the door was locked. I told myself I was imagining it, but my gut told another story. And in the mornings, she'd smile as if nothing had happened. Sleep well, she'd ask, pouring coffee. Each time my heart whispered, "Hold on. The results are coming. Hold on." Finally, on the fourth day, the call came. I was in the car outside the grocery store when my phone lit up with the clinic's number. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. "Hello," my voice cracked. "Mrs. Harris?" Dr. Patel's voice was steady but urgent. "We received your toxicology results." The world narrowed to the sound of her words. The sample contained trace amounts of digitalis, commonly known as foxglove. In higher doses, it can be lethal. It shouldn't be in food under any circumstance. My grip on the wheel went slick with sweat. "You're saying?" "Yes," Dr. Patel said gently. "Someone added it intentionally." The grocery store blurred outside my windshield. Cars pulled in and out, people carried bags, the world carried on like nothing had changed. But my reality tilted. Intentionally. Someone had tried to poison me. And the only person who could have done it smiled at me every morning across the table. I sat in the car long after the call ended, the world outside spinning like a carousel I couldn't get off. My fingers clenched the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Digitalis. Poison. Intentional. The words echoed in my skull, each one hammering the truth into me. My mother-in-law hadn't just been eccentric or overbearing or traditional. She had been feeding me poison, one spoonful at a time, wrapped in the disguise of care. For a long time, I couldn't breathe. I imagined the glossy surface of her stew, the sweetness that didn't belong the way she watched me swallow. And Daniel, my sweet, distracted husband, smiling as if love and family were being served in porcelain bowls. The world outside my windshield carried on oblivious. People laughed as they pushed carts. A child begged for candy. None of them knew that inside this car sat a woman who had just been told her own mother-in-law wanted her dead. Finally, I turned the key and drove home. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Every streetlight, every passing car seemed sharper, louder, as though the universe itself was on edge with me. When I stepped through the door, Eleanor was already there. It was as if she'd been waiting perched like a crow on the sofa, hands folded neatly in her lap. "You're late," she said, her voice calm. I worried. Worried. The word almost made me laugh. "I had errands," I replied, forcing my tone casual. I slipped off my shoes, praying my shaking hands weren't obvious. Her eyes narrowed sharp, assessing. "Errands? You didn't call." "I didn't think I had to," I said. My voice was steadier now, steel forming under the fear. She tilted her head, studying me the way a cat studies a trapped bird. "Everything about marriage is communication, dear. Secrets don't belong in this house." My heart pounded. If only she knew the secret I carried in my phone. Dinner that night was unbearable. Daniel chatted about a project at work, his voice warm, oblivious. Eleanor moved through the kitchen like a conductor, placing dishes on the table, her smile perfect. And then she set down the bowl, that same stew, the same glossy surface. "Your favorite," she said, her eyes glittering. I froze. The spoon weighted in my hand, heavy as a stone. Daniel looked at me, smiling. "Go on, you barely ate yesterday." I glanced at him, so innocent, so blind. If I told him now, would he believe me? Or would he defend her, call it paranoia? My pulse thundered in my ears. "I'm not hungry," I said, pushing the bowl slightly away. Eleanor's smile faltered just for a second, just enough for me to see the mask slip. "Not hungry," she repeated. "No." Her eyes sharpened, her jaw tight, but then the mask returned, the smile sliding back into place. "Very well. Perhaps tomorrow." But I had seen it, the flash of frustration, the shadow behind her eyes, and I knew then, without doubt, that Dr. Patel had been right. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards outside our bedroom door set my heart racing. I thought I smelled her perfume again, faint but lingering. Daniel snored softly beside me, his arm draped over my waist. I wanted to wake him, to whisper the truth in his ear, but fear held me back. Not fear of him, but fear of what would happen once the words were spoken, once the secret became real. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and padded to the bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the cold tile floor, clutching my phone. I texted Mina again. "The results are positive. It's poison. What do I do?" Her reply came minutes later. "Document everything. Protect yourself. And don't eat another bite." I pressed the phone to my chest and breathed, fighting back tears. The following morning, Eleanor was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. The smell of coffee filled the air, warm and inviting. She turned, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, dear," she said. "Sleep well?" I forced a nod. "Yes, thank you." Her smile lingered as she slid a mug toward me. "Drink. You'll need your energy." The steam curled upward. I stared at the cup, my stomach twisting. But I didn't drink. Not this time. Later that day, when Daniel left for work, Eleanor cornered me in the hallway. Her eyes were sharper now, her voice lower, stripped of its false warmth. "You've been distant," she murmured. "Suspicious. Tell me, what are you hiding?" I forced my breath steady. Nothing. She leaned closer, her lips brushing my ear. "Lies have a smell, dear, and you reek of them." My blood turned to ice. Before I could reply, she stepped back, her smile snapping into place once more. "Dinner at 7?" she said brightly, as though the moment had never happened. And I knew then the game was no longer hidden. The mask had slipped. That night, I waited until Daniel was asleep before slipping into the guest room. I sat on the bed in the dark, clutching my phone, whispering to myself. "You know the truth now. You can't pretend anymore. She's not eccentric. She's dangerous." The house creaked around me as if it were listening. I didn't know what the next move was, but I knew one thing for certain: I could no longer stay silent. Because silence in this house meant death. I woke up the next morning with the raw taste of fear still in my mouth. My eyes were swollen, gritty from lack of sleep. The guest room smelled faintly of dust and lavender, the bedspread stiff under my hands. I hadn't dared close my eyes for more than a few minutes at a time. Every creak of the house felt like Eleanor prowling just outside the door. By the time I forced myself downstairs, she was already in the kitchen, humming softly. The sound was deceptively sweet, like a lullaby turned sinister. She glanced over her shoulder at me, her face bright. "Good morning, dear. You're up late. I thought I'd let you rest," she said. Her eyes glittered in a way that made my skin crawl. "Coffee," she offered, lifting the pot. "No thanks. I'm trying to cut back," I lied quickly. Her smile didn't falter, but something in her jaw tensed. She poured herself a cup instead, stirring slowly. Daniel came downstairs moments later, whistling, buttoning his cuffs. He bent to kiss me on the cheek before grabbing his briefcase. "Big meeting today," he said. "Wish me luck." I wanted to shout the truth right then in front of him, to tear the curtain away from Eleanor's poisonous act. But the words stuck in my throat. "Good luck," I whispered instead. He smiled and left the door closing behind him. And then it was just the two of us. Eleanor sipped her coffee, her gaze never leaving mine. "You've changed," she said softly. "There's a distance in you. Secrets. I don't like secrets in this house." I forced myself to meet her stare. "Maybe it's because I don't feel safe sharing everything with you." Her lips parted slightly, the faintest flicker of surprise. Then she chuckled, low and dark. "Safe. I've done nothing but take care of you. Who else cooks for you, worries about your health, makes sure you're strong for my son?" My hands trembled under the table. "Cooking for me doesn't give you control over me?" Her smile faltered again just for a second. "Control. Oh dear, you misunderstand. I'm protecting what belongs to me. Daniel is my blood, my family, and no one takes him away from me." The venom in her tone made my heart lurch. That afternoon, Mina called. I stepped outside pretending I needed air. My phone pressed tight to my ear. "You can't stay quiet anymore," Mina urged. "If you don't tell Daniel, she'll keep pushing. You're not safe there." "I know," I whispered, glancing back at the living room window where Eleanor's shadow shifted behind the curtain. "But if I tell him now, what if he doesn't believe me? What if he thinks I'm attacking his mother?" Mina's voice softened. "Then you show him proof. Do you still have the report?" "Yes." "Then use it, before it's too late." The word "too late" rang in my ears, long after the call ended. That evening, dinner felt like sitting across from a predator. Eleanor had made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a bowl of soup she set down directly in front of me. "Special for you," she said. I didn't touch it. Daniel chatted, oblivious, cutting into his food. Every time his eyes flicked to me, I forced a smile, but inside my body was buzzing with adrenaline. Finally, when he left the table to answer a call, Eleanor leaned across the table, her eyes drilling into mine. "Do you think I don't notice?" she whispered. "You push the bowl away. You avoid my food. What are you planning?" My throat dried. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her smile was razor thin. "You're playing a dangerous game, dear. And games don't end well for liars." The air between us crackled with unspoken threats. That night, I made my decision. I couldn't keep hiding the truth. The report from Dr. Patel was folded neatly in my bag, my only shield. I waited until Eleanor had gone to bed, then crept into our room. Daniel was half asleep, scrolling on his phone. "You're still up?" he asked, yawning. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling, "and you have to listen. Really listen." He frowned, sitting up. "What's wrong?" I pulled out the report, my hands shaking, and placed it in his lap. "Read this." He scanned the pages, his brow furrowing. "Digitalis poison." He looked up confused. "What is this?" "It's what's been in the broth your mother's been giving me," I said. My voice broke raw and desperate. I took a sample to the doctor. "She's been poisoning me, Daniel, slowly, quietly. She wants me gone." His face went pale, his mouth opening and closing. No, that can't be true. She would never. It is true, I snapped, tears spilling over. I've been sick for weeks, and every time I ate what she gave me, it got worse. Don't you see? She smiles at you while she's killing me. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Daniel's chest rose and fell quickly, his eyes darting as if searching for escape. Finally, he whispered, I need to talk to her. My stomach dropped. No, you need to protect me first. But I could see it, the war inside him, the loyalty to his mother, battling against the love for me. And I knew the web Eleanor had spun around him was thicker than I feared. I barely slept that night. When dawn broke, I heard muffled voices downstairs. Daniel and Eleanor. I crept to the landing, heart pounding, and leaned closer. She's mistaken. Eleanor's voice floated up. You know how fragile she is. Always imagining things. She has the report, Daniel said, his tone shaky. Scientific proof. A pause. Then Eleanor's voice silk over steel. And you trust her more than you trust me. Your own mother. I pressed a hand to my mouth, fighting tears. The web was tightening. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Morning sunlight spilled weakly through the curtains, painting long streaks across the wooden floorboards, but even the warmth of the light couldn't thaw the icy dread coiled in my stomach. I descended the stairs slowly, each creak betraying me. My heart thudded in my ears as I reached the bottom and saw them, Daniel standing rigid near the kitchen counter, Eleanor seated at the table, her hands folded neatly as if she were the very picture of calm. Their conversation broke off when I entered. Both heads turned toward me. Good morning, Eleanor said, her voice syrupy. Too sweet. We were just talking about you. The way she said it, like a spider talking to a fly, made my skin crawl. Daniel's eyes flicked between us, unsettled. Claire, we need to clear this up. Mom says there's no way she would ever hurt you. She's confused why you think she would. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. Confused, Daniel, I have the lab report. I didn't make it up. I was being poisoned, and the only person giving me food like that was her. Eleanor tilted her head, her smile never wavering. You poor girl. Stress can do strange things to the mind. Imagining enemies where there are none. My fists clenched at my sides, imagining I nearly collapsed in the grocery store. I've been sick for weeks. Don't gaslight me, Eleanor. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her smile faltered just for an instant, replaced by a flicker of something darker, something triumphant and cruel. Daniel caught it too. I saw the way his eyes narrowed the first crack in his certainty. Mom? His voice was low, uncertain. What was in the broth? Herbs. Eleanor answered smoothly, though her tone sharpened. For her health. Old remedies passed down from my mother. She's simply not used to them. Digitalis isn't a remedy? I snapped. It's poison. Why don't you tell him the truth? The silence stretched thick and suffocating. Finally, Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her mask slipping piece by piece. You ungrateful little girl, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. I welcomed you into my home, into my son's life. And how do you repay me by turning him against me with lies? My throat burned, but I held her gaze. You tried to erase me, but I caught you. Daniel's face had gone pale, his hands gripping the counter so tightly his knuckles turned white. Mom? Is it true? Eleanor's expression hardened, the last veneer of sweetness gone. You think she belongs here, Daniel. She's weak. She's not worthy of you. I was only helping fate along. The words hung in the air like shards of glass. Daniel staggered back as if struck. Helping fate along. Do you even hear yourself? Her eyes glistened, but it wasn't sadness. It was fury. Everything I've ever done has been to protect you, to keep you safe from people who would drag you down. She turned her gaze on me, her lip curling. She's dragging you down. I stepped forward, my voice breaking. I love your son. I would never hurt him. But you almost killed me. Daniel slammed his fist against the counter, the sound reverberating through the kitchen. Enough! His voice cracked like thunder. Eleanor flinched, her mask breaking into pieces. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Daniel's breathing was ragged. He turned to me, then back to his mother, torn between two worlds. I could see the boy who had grown up under her iron grip, the man still searching for freedom. Claire brought me proof, he said, his voice quieter now, but steady. And I believe her. Eleanor's face drained of color. She rose from her chair, her movements sharp and unsteady. You believe her over your own mother? Yes, Daniel said firmly, his voice shaking but resolute. Because she's telling the truth? And you? He broke off, running a trembling hand through his hair. You're not the woman I thought you were. Eleanor's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes darted to me, blazing with hatred, then back to him, desperate. Daniel, please. Everything I did was for you. No, he whispered. It was for control. She moved suddenly, her hand lashing out toward me across the table, as if to grab or strike. I stumbled back, the chair legs screeching against the floor. Daniel stepped between us, his arm raised like a barrier. Don't you dare touch her. The air buzzed with electric silence. Finally, Eleanor drew back, her face twisted in rage. You'll regret this, she spat, her voice low and trembling. Both of you. You'll regret betraying me. Then she stormed out the door, slamming so hard the walls rattled. For a long time, neither of us moved. The house echoed with the silence she left behind. Finally, Daniel turned to me, his eyes wet. I can't believe it. His voice cracked, breaking something in me. All these years, and I never saw. I touched his arm gently. You see it now. That's what matters. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Eleanor wasn't the kind of woman to slink away quietly. She would regroup, plot, and return. And when she did, we had to be ready. The house felt cavernous without Eleanor's constant presence. Her footsteps, her clipped words, her piercing stares. For days after the confrontation, Daniel and I moved like ghosts, careful not to stir the lingering echoes of her rage. But even in the silence, I couldn't shake the unease. Her final words, "You'll regret this," reverberated in my chest. They weren't a threat made in anger. They were a promise. I found myself double-checking locks, scanning faces in grocery stores, half expecting her to emerge from behind a shelf with that venomous smile. Daniel noticed too. He held me more often, his arms a fortress I desperately needed. One evening, he came home from work, pale, carrying an envelope. He placed it on the table between us, his hands trembling. "Mom's lawyer," he muttered. I opened it with dread. Inside was a letter, cold, formal, brutal. Eleanor was contesting ownership of part of the business, claiming Daniel was unfit to manage it under the influence of an untrustworthy wife. My vision blurred with anger. "She's still trying to control you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, Claire. She's trying to destroy us." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of lawyers' meetings and sleepless nights. But something remarkable happened during that storm. Daniel stood firmly beside me. Every time Eleanor's accusations came up, he countered them. Every time she tried to twist the narrative, he brought it back to the truth. She underestimated us. He told me one night, exhaustion heavy in his eyes, but fire burning in his voice. She thought fear would divide us, but it's only made us stronger. And he was right. For the first time, I felt not just like a survivor, but like a partner, equally matched, equally heard. The final hearing was the moment of reckoning. Eleanor sat across the room, perfectly composed, her hair swept back, her pearls gleaming. She didn't look like a villain. She looked like a queen. But her eyes, cold, sharp, gave her away. When the evidence was presented, including the medical reports from the broth sample, her facade cracked. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Daniel's lawyer spoke with unwavering clarity, detailing her manipulations and the danger she had placed me in. For the first time, Eleanor had no words. The judge ruled in our favor. Her petition was denied. But victory didn't feel triumphant. It felt bittersweet. Watching Eleanor's face fall, I saw not just malice, but a woman consumed by obsession, her love twisted into something poisonous. Daniel sat beside me, his hand finding mine. "It's over," he whispered. I nodded, though a part of me wondered could it ever truly be over with someone like her. Life slowly found its rhythm again. I regained strength, my health restored, laughter returned to our home. But the scars, emotional, invisible, remained. One night I stood at the kitchen window watching the moonlight spill across the yard. I thought about everything, the broth, the lies, the confrontation, the courtroom, and I realized something: survival had changed me. I wasn't the same woman who had once sipped soup with polite gratitude. I was sharper now, stronger. Daniel joined me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That we're lucky," I said. "Lucky to have found the truth before it was too late. Lucky to have each other." He kissed my temple, and unlucky enough to have my mother as the villain of our story. I laughed, a sound that felt good unburdened. Every story has a villain, but ours has something better too. It has resilience. It has love. He squeezed me tighter, and it has you. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And sometimes the most dangerous threats don't come from strangers, but from those who claim to love us most. But love the real kind, the kind that chooses you every single day, that's stronger than any poison. So if you've ever faced betrayal, if you've ever felt small under someone else's shadow, remember, your voice matters. Your strength is real, and your story isn't over. Share your story if you feel ready, or simply hold it close, knowing you're not alone. And if you found something in my story that moved you, made you think, or reminded you of your own courage, please take a moment to reflect, subscribe, or share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes survival isn't just about living through the storm. It's about telling the tale afterward so others know they can survive too.